We turn our attention to another interview on another network. I didn't think there were other networks. Anyway, Kamala Harris sat down for her first and only solo national interview. How brave of the campaign.
Sean Hannity, a prominent conservative political commentator and host of Hannity on Fox News, has carved a significant niche for himself in the landscape of American media. Known for his unapologetically partisan views, he often scrutinizes the actions and statements of political figures, particularly those associated with the Democratic Party.
With, of course, one of her top supporters at MSDNC, Stephanie Ruhle. Now, she's a big supporter of Kamala Harris. She is rooting for Kamala to win. That's fine in my book. She's a radical left-wing talk show host. Needless to say, this was not a hard-hitting interview with a nonpartisan reporter. By the way, that's okay. I interviewed Donald Trump. I definitely want Donald Trump to win. I'm not shy about it. I say it all the time. We are both members of the press. She fancies herself a journalist. She's not. She's a talk show host like me. I'm honest about who I am. Donald Trump doesn't just talk to yours truly. He answers questions. He does press avails on virtually every outlet on a regular basis. So does J.D. Vance. Even he does it with networks that hate him, which is most of the media mob. So for tonight's appearance on MSDNC, to be Kamala's only solo national television interview, after the 16 minutes and 29 seconds with Tim Walz on fake news CNN, it's troubling, especially when she can't even answer a single question without contradicting herself. For example, here she is vowing to fix the economy. Last year, she was saying, we call it Bidenomics, and we're so proud of it.
His style blends opinion-driven commentary with discussions that engage with current events, providing a platform where he can express his support for candidates and policies aligned with his values. Hannity's career began in local radio and eventually transitioned to television, where he gained prominence for his strong conservative stance.
The giggling vice president, proud of Bidenomics until finally now the realities set in that, I'm not so proud. Also, she talked about fixing the border, but during the very height of the border crisis, your border czar kept telling you the border's secure when it never was, and everybody knew it. Never mind, she wants free housing, health care, food, education, amnesty, and, sex change operations for illegal immigrants to reward them for their illegal behavior. Is Kamala ever going to explain blatant lies? Is she ever going to be asked by the media? I doubt it. And look at your screen. Will she ever be asked about her radical stated positions in her own words? Because tonight there was no mention of her support for getting rid of the filibuster to pass the $93 trillion Green New Deal or government health care for all and banning private health insurance or banning fracking and offshore drilling or decriminalizing illegal immigration and offering all these free everything for illegals. And on top of that, then we have Kamala Harris, even those that are in jail would get sex change operations. It is bizarre. And even during tonight's softball questions, Kamala struggled again. This was supposed to be an easy interview with a friendly MSDNC liberal leftist talk show host that was going to bat for her over the weekend.
He is known for his unwavering support of former President Donald Trump, frequently advocating for Trump's policies and critiquing opponents with a fervor that resonates with his audience. This dedication to Trump has defined much of Hannity's brand, positioning him as a leading voice within conservative media.
It's not nirvana to expect somebody who wants to be president to answer questions about what she says she wants to do. Now, she had a hard time answering questions from a loyal supporter at, socialist MSDNC who wants to give her a free pass on everything. How is she going to confront Putin or Xi or the mullahs in Iran as president? And by the way, we reported last night, the Islamic Republic of Iran, they are now actively trying to murder Donald Trump. This should come as no surprise. In 2022, they released a cheap, poorly produced animated video fantasizing about assassinating Donald Trump on a golf course near Mar-a-Lago as a revenge for killing their favorite terrorist, and that would be General Soleimani. And now coordinated efforts from Iran to assassinate Donald Trump are intensifying as the election nears. My sources say it is beyond the pale. It's never been this loud. It's never been this dangerous. But at the same time, the Iranian president is in our country, allowed in this country, to spew anti-American rhetoric, anti-Semitic rhetoric at the United Nations. Here's how Donald Trump responded.
One of Hannity's hallmarks is his ability to engage his audience through direct commentary on political events. He does not shy away from discussing controversial topics, often framing them in a way that emphasizes the failures of democratic leadership. His commentary is characterized by a sense of urgency, which serves to mobilize his audience around issues he considers critical.
The Iranians fear Trump. They're not going to hear a response like that from Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. They are unable to muster the courage to openly defend Donald Trump and his supporters from threats from a foreign nation, a radical Islamic terrorist-supporting nation, the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. They continuously spout their own toxic rhetoric against Donald Trump. Iran now trying to interfere in this election, murdered Donald Trump. They already hacked his campaign emails. Nobody in the press seems to give a damn. And the left's dangerous rhetoric just continues. And this includes Biden's idiotic Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo, who just called on MSDNC for Donald Trump to be extinguished for good.
In recent discussions, Hannity has expressed his opinions on various political figures and their media appearances, particularly focusing on how those appearances can influence public perception. He often critiques interviews and debates, emphasizing the need for political figures to engage with challenging questions from journalists.
Donald Trump has just survived not one but 2 assassination attempts, all while Iran is trying to finish the job. And they still didn't sweep the area around Trump International. And a member of Biden's cabinet is calling for Trump to be extinguished for good. Frankly, beyond irresponsible. And by the way, Secret Service, maybe bring her in and ask her what the hell she meant by that. And it's not just Raimondo. On that hard-hitting news show, The View, Joe Biden himself continued to dehumanize Donald Trump, even pretended to squish him like a bug. Lighted 2 assassination attempts, maybe not the smartest move. According to Democrats, the mob, the media, state-run media, Trump is an existential threat to our survival. They say it all the time. They compare him to Hitler. They vilify him around every turn. Some even, after Trump was almost murdered. Reckless, irresponsible, and consistent. That's it. This is the new radical, extreme, Marxist, leftist party that wants to get in power. This isn't new. The left in this country has openly been fantasizing about Donald Trump's demise for years, and nobody's been held accountable.
Hannity believes that transparency and accountability are paramount, and he regularly calls out media outlets that he perceives as biased or uncritical toward Democratic candidates.
Eliminated, put a bullet in Trump, blow up the White House. When's the last time an actor murdered a president? I will take him out tonight. If you're a Trump hater or a Democrat, the media mob, you'll get a pass. Your violent rhetoric, you can joke about killing a president. You can even glorify violent crime and rioting. In fact, the current Democratic nominee for president, Kamala Harris, she has done both.
The impact of Hannity's commentary is multifaceted. On one hand, he energizes his audience, providing them with a sense of belonging and shared ideology.
The rioters won't stop, they shouldn't stop, or we're not going to stop supporting them. And by the way, a lot of this said after the assassination attempt, 2 now against Donald Trump. But if the roles were reversed, can you imagine the hysteria? State-run media mob would be on a whole new level. Keep in mind, the would-be assassin on Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida, mere 300 yards away from the former president who was heading in his direction, hiding in an area never swept by the Secret Service, even though they knew about this Iranian threat, even though unauthorized paparazzi were known to post up there. Meanwhile, the shooter in Butler, PA, less than 150 yards away from the president on a rooftop in plain sight when he fired several rounds. And tonight, preliminary Senate report out on the assassination attempts in Butler, Pennsylvania. Startling failures of the Secret Service. The only drone visuals controlled by an agent who had just 1 hour of informal training on the device, had to call a toll-free number for technical help with the drone he's operating. More alarming, the lead Secret Service agent at the rally was aware of credible intelligence about a threat against Trump, but never passed it along to his fellow agents. Meanwhile, the on-site communications, a complete disaster. Secret Service agents observed local law enforcement running to the building, guns drawn, where the shooter was stationed, but didn't know what was happening.
On the other hand, his approach has drawn criticism for fostering division in an already polarized political environment. Detractors argue that his style encourages echo chambers, where opposing views are dismissed rather than debated.
The real insults come from Kamala herself, don't they? Because she insults our intelligence every time she sits down for even a friendly interview.
Laura Ingraham tackles the ultimate insult to the American people.
It could not have been a softer interview and presentation. The only missing line or missing question was, do you like long walks on the beach? She could reveal that as well. And as for the one-on-one with liberal billionaire Oprah Winfrey, if there was such a thing as a verbal foot rub, this would be it.
It seems to us that something happened to you the moment President Biden, stepped aside and withdrew his candidacy, that a veil or something dropped.
With Kamala Harris's failures on economic policies and border security becoming impossible to ignore.
Now, we have to remember, Harris has always benefited in her career from special treatment, including in this campaign. Now, she didn't have to go to win the Iowa caucuses or tramp through the snows of New Hampshire to convince voters there. And she doesn't have to do press conferences with hostile reporters, as Trump does. She hasn't had to explain her policy toward China or Russia. Her role is simply to repeat platitudes and memorize phrases.
We love our country. I love our country. I know we all do. That's why everybody's here right now. We love our country. We take pride in the privilege of being American.
Her press team has resorted to recycling tired, worn-out lines from 2016 and 2020.
I thought she said we were systemically racist. How do you take pride in that kind of country? And hope that the hundreds of millions of dollars that she's raised from millionaires and billionaires are going to be enough to drown out Trump's message of peace and prosperity. That's what they're hoping for. And if she wins, the establishment's going to make use of this template for all future campaigns, where the voters are kept in the dark, receive no assurances about anything, and they just simply dine out on celebrity endorsements and personality plays. This is a complete rejection of the democratic process from the phony defenders of democracy. And it's one big insult to all of us.
But as Laura points out, the real insults don't come from Donald Trump, whose jabs at political figures have become part of his brand, but from Kamala Harris herself.
But then came the surprise questions, and they were really kind of tough. Like, how are you going to reduce the high cost of living?
I'd love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that. And there are a number of ways.
Laura highlights how Kamala's media presence often feels more like a shallow attempt at charm than an opportunity to provide substantive answers. She mocks Harris's interviews as overly simplistic and superficial, noting how these moments often come off as scripted performances rather than genuine conversations.
Far more elusive, the American, what? I love how she acts like some external force caused inflation, by the way, not her and Joe's idiotic spending bills. Now, that's insulting, and it's also arrogant to believe that Americans should vote for you even as you are unwilling or maybe unable to explain your policies.
According to Laura, Kamala's reluctance to directly answer questions on key topics like inflation and border security reflects a broader issue. Instead of offering clear solutions, Harris often leans on vague and recycled talking points. This, Ingraham argues, shows either a lack of understanding or a refusal to engage with the reality of the country's problems.
Her answers kind of remind me of that college kid who, when called on by the professor, hasn't done the class reading, so he or she just merely restates the question posed, as Kamala did on the question of how she's going to fix the border.
Laura also points out the hypocrisy in Harris's public persona, calling out the inconsistency between her statements and the actual effects of her policies.
At this point, Oprah's got to be thinking to herself, man, I just should have run for president myself. It would have been easier than live coaching this woman. Now, every exchange was an easy Kamala layup. And by the end of the interminable 68 minutes, Oprah had allowed Harris to kind of rebrand herself from an anti-Second Amendment fanatic to a modern-day Annie Oakley.
Whether it's on issues like public safety or economic hardship, Ingraham accuses Harris of offering empty reassurances that fail to address the struggles Americans face every day. Laura Ingraham sees Harris's entire approach as a calculated effort to avoid accountability.
I'm sure they would have thought it was just perfect for Trump to laugh if he said someone would get shot if it came into his home. They would have, oh yeah, they would have said, oh, it's heartless, you have no compassion. What if you shoot the wrong person? This is just more insults to our intelligence. And of course, it was all calculated, but it was poorly carried out rebranding. Kamala's just like you. But then you think to yourself, I don't speak like the words of one of those lame motivational posters hanging in your company break room.
By relying on friendly interviews and scripted performances, Harris tries to rebrand herself without ever addressing the core issues that matter most to voters.
The freedom to just be. I love how Oprah goes, Note her use of the phrase, how we came into being there. And again, the freedom to be. Freedom to be, unless you're one of the infants in the womb who's aborted in Kamala's dreamland. And speaking of that, today she uttered more insulting drivel about abortion in Atlanta. Her language was crafted specifically to mislead the public.
To Laura, this strategy isn't just dishonest. It's insulting to the American people, who deserve real answers and leadership, not hollow platitudes and superficial campaigns.
Most vulnerable among us? How about those who can't yet speak for themselves? How condescending, though. Condescending to women, who, by the way, are poorer than they were 4 years ago, are less safe than they were on the streets 4 years ago, and less confident in the future than they were 4 years ago. But Kamala's crack group of high-paid pollsters and consultants believe that women's first, second, and third most important concerns are abortion, more abortion.
Laura Ingraham doesn't hold back as she continues to dissect what she sees as Kamala Harris's superficial strategy.
We already know about the elites here at home who are doing everything in their power to defeat Trump. There's billionaire Alex Soros, who met with Tim Walz yesterday. He appeared to be in his favorite genuflect position. Then there's billionaire Mark Cuban, who it seems is incapable of measured thought about Trump's enduring popularity.
She focuses on how Harris's avoidance of tough questions and reliance on rehearsed responses are meant to distract from the vice president's lack of real achievements. According to Laura, this method not only undermines the role of leadership, but also signals a clear disregard for the concerns of everyday Americans. Ingram criticizes Harris's preference for controlled environments, where she's only faced with easy, pre-approved questions.
That are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on anti-Trump ads and lawsuits. Huge donor money also flows to smear groups staffed by Never Trump hatchet men. But Trump doesn't just have to beat all of them and their money. He's also up against the global elites who love having a weak U.S. president in place who puts foreign interests before America's. That's why they love Biden.
Laura emphasizes that the American people deserve better, someone who is willing to face tough questions head-on, rather than hiding behind media personalities and celebrities who shield her from scrutiny. To Laura, this approach is not only evasive, but manipulative. It creates a false image of competence while ignoring the harsh realities of failed policies that have worsened the economy and left the border in disarray.
It's really, really, really unfortunate that she could not see that question coming. I mean, a child could have told you that after a former president was nearly killed a second time, you might want to be ready for the question of how many times does it take before you make sure that you've got the protection around him per the White House that looks like a president currently, because that's what it's going to take. You'd think she'd be ready for that. I immediately got on X and said, there's never a hatchack around when you need.
Harris Faulkner, a well-respected journalist and anchor for Fox News, has recently found herself in the spotlight due to a combination of her impactful reporting and public discussions surrounding her comments and professional choices.
How are we supposed to trust the Secret Service to investigate themselves if they won't even tell us who they're investigating? Thankfully, whistleblowers are leaking. The New York Times is reporting the lead agent in charge of security at the Butler rally is Meredith Bank.
The lane she was dangerously weaving and bobbing and going into, and that's where she didn't want to go, but she couldn't help herself because the answer to the question was she doesn't want to stop saying he's not a threat.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to stop saying he's a threat, rather, because that's how Democrats see it, a threat to democracy. It's their talking point. And they haven't thought it through. Well, could that be part of the problem of why he's endangered? If they have thought it through, then they're complicit. And if they haven't, they're really naive.
As a trailblazer in the field, Faulkner has long been known for her engaging interview style and insightful analysis of current events.
So Peter calls her out on it. She's upset, calls him dangerous for the question. I call her dangerous for the answer. Stop calling Donald Trump a threat. I mean, people have tried to kill him more than once now.
However, the past few weeks have brought new developments that have sparked conversations among viewers and media commentators alike.
Yeah, exactly. And it's dangerous for Peter to ask a question of the federal government. You can't do that. It's also dangerous for J.D. Vance to question the media. Now, despite the second attempt on Trump's life, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre doubled down on referring to Trump as a threat.
One of the primary reasons Harris Faulkner has been in the news is her candid discussions regarding race and representation in media. Faulkner, who is of African-American descent, has openly addressed the importance of diversity in journalism.
Look, if you're feeling this economy, there's no way that you're buying what they're selling right now.
Absolutely.
So the polling is inflated. It always is. It's a brand new, shiny new object. And,
That's right.
and Barack and Michelle last night were really selling it for Kamala and so on and so forth. Well, they pretty much had to because she was next door at a fundraiser in Wisconsin.
Right.
America's better than
this. It's a true point.
Yes,
we have
spot
sovereignty as a nation. I don't care how you vote.
Thank you.
I don't care what you think. What I know is this is the United States of America, and if they broke laws to get here, don't spend another dime on them. Deport them. What did we get yesterday? We got more of what she says on the campaign. I was watching you guys earlier. You can do the side-by-sides and see how she keeps repeating herself and so on. My big question today is, you had, and look, this is no disrespect to Eugene and Garen and Tanya who were doing the job. You did not have network anchors up there, though, who do TV every day. And it was a different feel about it, or at least do that pressure cooker type of what we do.
The big stars in the party carry her flag for her, and the media does, some of them too.
In light of the ongoing national conversations about racial equality and representation, her insights have resonated with many viewers.
Primetime looked all over the internet. New York Times is reporting the lead agent in charge of security at the Butler rally is Meredith Bank. Primetime looked all over the internet for information about Meredith Bank. No photos, no bio, it's all gone. Now, we don't know how qualified Agent Bank is. Was she one of the female agents that former director Kimberly Cheadle was promoting with her DEI agenda? We don't know. Was she one of the female agents that was promoted even after failing tests? We don't know. But Butler was a test, and she failed it.
It never goes well. You know, this guy served his country and worked hard all his life. No wonder CNN sees him as the problem.
You know, for those who didn't see, Carly, J.D. Vance brought constituent complaints to his interview. She can fact check them, fine. That's what the media can do. But then he questioned Dana Bash, giving multiple choice questions to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, contrasting it with his interview where he was constantly interrupted. And it's not dangerous for him to question the media.
Here's a tip, lady. Never interview a guy with a beer in one hand and a Solo cup in the other.
During her segments, Faulkner has emphasized the need for a variety of voices in media, advocating for greater inclusivity within the industry. Recently, Faulkner hosted a special segment on Fox News dedicated to the achievements and challenges faced by Black Americans.
Yeah,
I mean,
what a shame.
Who gets a pass like that?
What a disappointment the media has been for all of us, really letting down the American people.
Saw in Chicago is their annual conference. So any venue that they would have booked by NABJ would have been much larger than, basically a campaign stop. And by the way, NABJ promised, it came out in all of its language, that this was a journalism event and that this was not politics. On all the campaign materials, this was a campaign stop. Well, I'm a little concerned about when you get 51 experts and they have anything to do with our economy, our national security. How often are they this wrong?
Yes.
I mean, we happen to know about this time, but if these are the people that they're consulting on a regular basis, it might explain a lot of the failure that we see.
His commentary tends to focus on freedom of speech, cancel culture, and what he sees as the encroachment of political correctness on personal liberties. Gutfeld's style is more relaxed and conversational, aiming to make serious topics more accessible and entertaining without losing the substance of his arguments. Kayleigh McEnany, on the other hand, brings a more structured and formal approach to her political analysis.
And should we maybe bump some of those people out of the circle? Like, Biden promised that if somebody wasn't doing the right thing on day one, remember the 1,000-person Zoom or whatever it was? And he was saying, I'm going to get rid of whoever doesn't do their job or is not kind. And he had all the things. And of course, he hasn't really applied that promise. But this would be a place, well, maybe those are the people you shouldn't be listening to. And by the way, can you tell us where else they haven't been right so that we can prepare for that? I am shocked by this because I didn't realize we'd migrated so far as a society that we would give criminals who potentially have come across the border illegally.
Liberal media pundits quickly claimed that Vice President Kamala Harris won Tuesday's debate. But it seemed undecided voters are not so sure. The New York Times reporting this. Voters said the vice president talked about a sweeping vision to fix the country's most stubborn problems, but they wanted the fine print.
Harris was hoping for Trump to hit that legal pothole in October, and now legally Trump has a clear road ahead. Reality is setting in, and Obama world is telling Democrats not to get your hopes up. They say it's very possible that if the election were held today, Trump would win. That's what we've been telling you. Democrat numbers guru Nate Silver says stop ignoring the elephant in the room. Quote, the Electoral College is starting to look like a challenge for Kamala. After a slew of what Silver calls mediocre polls for Harris, he's forecasting Trump winning every single battleground by 1 to 4 points. Silver gives Trump a 62% chance of winning. And the Clintons are sharpening their knives.
Greg Gutfeld brings a more satirical and irreverent tone to political commentary. As a co-host on The Five and host of his own late-night show, he blends humor with critique, often mocking both political figures and the media. Gutfeld's role is to provide a comedic yet insightful perspective, using humor to disarm and engage his audience. He often tackles the absurdities of political discourse, pointing out contradictions and the often performative nature of modern politics.
That felt really good. Happy Tuesday, everyone. So in Monday's TV address, President Biden appeared to have a spray tan. Aides say he tried using a tanning bed, but when they closed the lid, Dr. Jill kept throwing dirt and flowers on top.
And it was not just the New York Times that found that the debate was not a slam dunk for Harris. Reuters interviewed 10 people who were still unsure how they were going to vote in the November 5th election before they watched the debate. 6, that's about 60%, said afterwards that they would now neither vote for Trump or they were leaning toward backing him. 3 said they would now back Harris, and 1 was still unsure how he would vote.
Even Biden's going to watch Tuesday's debate with low expectations. His team thinks Kamala's public performances are uneven and often not reassuring. They worry she struggles under the glare of national pressure. They find her risk-averse to the point of paralysis.
As a former White House press secretary under the Trump administration, she draws on her experience to provide insider perspectives on political strategy and media relations. McEnany often defends conservative policies and leaders, particularly those of Donald Trump, while also critiquing what she sees as unfair media bias and misinformation.
Look, if you're feeling this economy, there's no way that you're buying what they're selling right now.
Absolutely.
So the polling is inflated. It always is. It's a brand new, shiny new object. And,
That's right.
and Barack and Michelle last night were really selling it for Kamala and so on and so forth. Well, they pretty much had to because she was next door at a fundraiser in Wisconsin.
Right.
America's better than
It's
this.
a true point.
Yes,
we have
spot
sovereignty as a nation. I don't care how you vote.
Thank you.
I don't care what you think. What I know is this is the United States of America, and if they broke laws to get here, don't spend another dime on them. Deport them. What did we get yesterday? We got more of what she says on the campaign. I was watching you guys earlier. You can do the side-by-sides and see how she keeps repeating herself and so on. My big question today is, you had, and look, this is no disrespect to Eugene and Garen and Tanya who were doing the job. You did not have network anchors up there, though, who do TV every day. And it was a different feel about it, or at least do that pressure cooker type of what we do.
The big stars in the party carry her flag for her, and the media does, some of them too.
Yeah,
I mean,
what a shame.
Who gets a pass like that?
What a disappointment the media has been for all of us, really letting down the American people.
Harris Faulkner just made an unexpected, huge announcement that has left her audience stunned. Known for her sharp commentary and insightful reporting, this revelation is something no one saw coming. With her poised and powerful delivery, Harris is addressing an issue that could have far-reaching implications, whether it's about her personal journey, a professional shift, or a bold stance on a major topic. This announcement is bound to spark conversation and leave a lasting impact on both her fans and critics alike. Stay tuned as Harris takes center stage in a way that's sure to surprise everyone.
Saw in Chicago is their annual conference. So any venue that they would have booked by NABJ would have been much larger than, basically a campaign stop. And by the way, NABJ promised, it came out in all of its language, that this was a journalism event and that this was not politics. On all the campaign materials, this was a campaign stop. Well, I'm a little concerned about when you get 51 experts and they have anything to do with our economy, our national security. How often are they this wrong?
Yes.
I mean, we happen to know about this time, but if these are the people that they're consulting on a regular basis, it might explain a lot of the failure that we see. And should we maybe bump some of those people out of the circle? Like, Biden promised that if somebody wasn't doing the right thing on day one, remember the 1,000-person Zoom or whatever it was? And he was saying, I'm going to get rid of whoever doesn't do their job or is not kind. And he had all the things. And of course, he hasn't really applied that promise. But this would be a place, well, maybe those are the people you shouldn't be listening to. And by the way, can you tell us where else they haven't been right so that we can prepare for that? I am shocked by this because I didn't realize we'd migrated so far as a society that we would give criminals who potentially have come across the border illegally the same rights that our people have, which have been mitigated so much by soft on crime policies. Like, I mean, it's gotten so much easier for the criminals and so much harder for the victims. And now the people who break our number one law first coming across the border, number one thing, like you didn't even get here legally, and then they get to do more crime against us. And then you let them go per the things that are on the books for the criminals who are American. Zero bail. Look no further than this case, and you know what's at stake for both of those presidential candidates Thursday night. It is Trump's border policies versus Biden's border politics. And if you want to know just how deep the politics go to the fact that even his Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas couldn't speak of one victim per name. Now, we've had enough of these situations that we're at a tipping point, I would imagine. Like, Biden's going to have to do more than just blame the Republicans. I don't know what Thursday night will look like, but on this Monday, that court, oh my goodness, they saw that mom who was so brave before the microphones today, sitting just feet away from one of the monsters who took her little girl. I remember that moment so vividly because it was the opposite of what anybody would do. Anybody would show you civility. This was July 31st. July 13th, he had been shot in the first assassination attempt on his life. The journalists couldn't even start there with, "We're glad you're okay. This is your first opportunity to talk with this group of people, and we're glad you've come today. You know that we're going to ask tough questions. You know that there might be some in the audience who wish that they were asking the tough questions right now." I think that's how you put it. So I am actually surprised and shocked that we have gotten that far. But I don't want to be surprised or shocked about what has to happen next. I want to feel confident that we're going to do the right thing. And that is, if we think these guys came over illegally.
I don't know how you don't mention how to make life better here in Chicago. You had Chicago's golden son on the dais last night at that convention, Barack Obama.
Yes, that's right.
And I now call him the closer, the commander and closer, because it was his job to just close the door on Biden. Too bad it wasn't his job when he was in office not to close the door on crime, or at least draw attention to it in his own home city. And he missed that opportunity again last night. Look, she's not day one ready to fight the kind of crime that we're seeing here. It's worse here than it is in New York, at least statistically. It's less random here, perhaps, because it is in some certain concentrated areas. But murder is murder. And anybody can be a target. And we're seeing those numbers tick right back up. And it's really, really disconcerting when you're in the middle of it.
The part that you didn't show was the very top of that, when we all sat down first. And the comment was from the ABC News reporter there, "This audience didn't want you here. Are you aware of that?" I'm paraphrasing it a bit. It was actually a little less pleasant than that. But that was first out of the gate. So it was hostile. It felt like an ambush. And look, he took the bait. Vice President Kamala Harris's past is haunting her now. She pushed to eliminate private health insurance and force 150 million people onto a government plan. Americans are waiting to hear exactly what her current plan will be for their health care. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. This is a big issue for so many people, particularly those who are retired and on a budget. You got to know whether or not you can keep your doctor. The campaign totally flip-flopping on her 2019 position when she was running for president the first time and didn't get a single delegate on her side of the aisle. A senior official is telling Fox News that the VP, quote, "will not push single payer or Medicare for all." There's no denying that. It turned into, right off the top, a pretty caustic situation. But what would any of us do if you think you're walking into making history at the NABJ, not by digital, not in a city that you would choose because it's on the campaign trail, Philadelphia, not any of that, but you're going into the largest audience of black journalists all year long. So that was big. Yeah, they're not any closer to getting the deal done. So unlike Trump, when he's asked the question about how you bring both sides in the Ukraine and Russia war, for instance, together, he would do it as president-elect. It would be a phone call. You watched the debate, you know.
Yeah.
No specificity on a place where, did you know that Washington State has 100,000 uncommitted voters from the primary? Like, I get it from Minnesota and Michigan, but that's the number that, so she might have wanted to reach out to that. Bottom line is, nobody pressed her. She didn't feel challenged. She sat back, seemed very comfortable, and that was different than how they treated the Republican candidate for the White House.
Well, one thing that's different in past years, like 2016, 2020, is that people will talk to you about how they feel. So I think it's not just disingenuous, it's a lie.
Yeah.
When these leaders in the White House, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, say that they don't know how people feel and that suddenly it's news to her. You know how the polls are being impacted right now? They have a complicit legacy and liberal media to help them out.
That's right.
I mean, that's playing a role. And look, there are questions about, even with all of that, why is it so close?
Yeah.
Why can't she pull away? Because people see the truth, they're living it every day, and they still feel unheard.
What is she saying there? I mean, it's the National Association of Black Journalists. When I asked Trump the first question I did, I said, look, there are many black communities. We're not all the same. We vote differently. We do things differently. I set it up in such a way that this is your audience. Why did she go there if she hadn't intended to talk specifically to a question that was asked about that audience? That was, look, if she didn't want to be there talking with whomever, that would be one thing. But black men in particular are a soft spot for her. And part of it is the lack of specificity around the idea of economics and how to change life. And, you know, for people who are really suffering right now. Another area that I thought was a tender spot for her, though, was the Palestinian.